That's fairly stupid of me. I thought it was the 18th. Should have checked. So, clean my glasses so I can cut the glare. I'm in front of the screen so much. Okay, so let's, so we are on the 17th of July. I'll change the date when I'm done. And it's a Monday, it's 10:17 in the morning, it's 90 degrees. It's going to be 100 or 101 today, probably, which is, they're telling us that this bad heat wave is breaking a little, not a lot, a little. Trying to get this piece of junk to reset. It's not. And it's probably not, it's going to be hot, they say, but not as bad as it has been. But it's still going to be a pain on the dogs. Okay. Today I'm getting the air conditioner installed or half installed. So I'm going to have to do a brief broadcast because he's going to need the room here and there's going to be drilling and stuff like that, and it's too hot to work outside. If I did work outside, I'd have to aim 2 fans at me, and they would drown out the broadcast. So we'll move quickly, and I'll get some points across, and then that is going to be it. I got to sum it up. Okay. The threat, well, let's do the praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 So I got this stuff here. Oh, I put the coffee up here. I got, where the heck is it? Here it is. I got an interesting coffee. It comes in a jar. It's a premix. My wife's dominating the kitchen, so I can't go boil. And I bought a water boiler for the room here, and I have to clean it. If you put just enough in, like a cup of coffee, I believe you can get it in 45 seconds. I'm trying to peel this wrapper off. Packaging in Israel, and I have to say, like most countries, is atrocious. The people have degenerated in their habits so bad, that they go into supermarkets and they open stuff and eat and drink it, and, try to have a meal in the supermarket for free or something, I don't know. And it's gotten very bad. So the packaging here is pathetic. And this is just another example that you need to have a machete to get this thing off. I mean, why did it do that? I do know. It's because the people are so dishonest. The Israelis look down on the Anglos and the immigrants, and they discriminate against them in an extremely heavy manner. It's almost as bad as what happened when I grew up in New York with them discriminating against Jews. So you come to Israel and you want to live where you're not discriminated against Jews, and then you get discriminated against by other Jews. The ones that have been here longer than you discriminate against you heavily. They don't want to hire you, and if they do, it's an insult to give you the same wages that they're going to give somebody that's been here, second or third generation. Gosh, this is insane. I'm almost there. See what the packaging is like in this country is cheaper. Well, it's most countries, it's not just here, it's pretty much, that's not fair to say it's here. So, the Ultra-Orthodox don't consider you a Jew. Even the Orthodox don't consider you a Jew. because they're running around following Talmud and you're not, or you're messianic and you think you're the worst thing that ever happened to Israel. They think that they're taught by many that you're bringing a curse on Israel. They teach that if you put a New Testament in your house, you'll bring a curse in your house. The Ultra-Orthodox discriminate against the secular Jews, which is half of Israel. Basically you should get the idea. It's a complete farce. The ones that live in the West Bank, I tried to find statistics that they were mostly Ashkenazi, and I couldn't because I think nobody in Israel would dare publish it, but I have a feeling they're about 90% to 100% or very heavily Ashkenazi. I don't think the others want to bother with the West Bank, but I don't have any statistics. I could be wrong. I haven't been in the West Bank in a long, long time. So, let's talk about Netanyahu, the curse of Israel. I'm going to refer to him as an it or a thing, okay? Some of you know why, and some of you could imagine. I dislike him. He's the worst thing that I know of in my life, in my days in Israel, that ever happened to Israel. So he went to the hospital, I think it was the night before last. And the first rumor we got was he was feeling unwell. Well, what does that mean? He got shot with a 12-gauge shotgun and he feels unwell. We don't know what it means. Okay, to the emergency room. Then it comes out that he passed out in his house and fell down and hit the floor. Then it comes out that they're running tests of an unspecified nature on him, and they're keeping him overnight in the hospital. So we were told it was dehydration, and that made sense with the heat wave. It was a good idea they did. Now, could it have been dehydration? Yes. But it was combined with a heart problem. Can dehydration make your heart behave in an irregular fashion? Yes. But here's the kicker. They made him stay the night, then the next day they implanted a heart monitor. It's called subcutaneous. So they probably strapped the big box on you someplace, and then under the skin they probably put the sensor so they could get a more accurate reading of the heart that'll tell them more. And then, I don't know, every day they transmit it to the hospital. Maybe it goes over the internet. I don't know. Maybe they send somebody to download it, or he downloads it. Who the heck knows? But they wouldn't put a subcutaneous heart monitor in somebody unless they felt their heart problem really needed to be watched very carefully. And what would their thoughts be on this? Well, it's just basic stuff. They could decide that he has to have a certain medicine. Do I think they gave him a medicine? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But they were concerned. I went to the doctor years ago, and I went to the hospital emergency room like 35 years ago, and I was getting irregular arrhythmia, unusual bursts, and they put the suction cup things on me back then. Israel has, to a great extent, backwards medicine. 20, 25 years backwards with the drugs they use and the equipment. Now, they have good equipment for people like Netanyahu and the rich, but the regular people don't always get the best stuff, okay? So, they told me they saw it on the monitor, but it was nothing to worry about. They just sent me home. And then I saw a doctor, I think before I got the heart test. I don't remember, but I went to see him. And he told me that it was dehydration, and told me to drink 2 liters in a day of sweetened liquid. So you're talking like orange soda, strawberry soda, something like that, right? He wanted me to have the sugar probably to keep me going again. I did get dehydrated. It was living in a place called Mevaseret Zion on a street named Olive Road. It was Olive Tree Street, something like that. Zaitin or something. Zaitin. And this is in the mid-90s, and it doesn't get anywhere as hot there as it does here, but it can still hit 90s, which is hot enough to get dehydrated. So I came out of it, real quick, guzzling. It was such a painful treatment. Get some big bottles of cold orange soda and drink it, Well, that certainly was easy to do. And I was drinking coffee. The dehydration was making me tired. I was drinking a lot of coffee, and they asked me that in the emergency room. And that could also be one. So anyway, that's what happened. So, yes, from my own personal experiences, I'm of the belief, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical expert, I'm not giving any medical advice in any way, shape, or form. I can't, I'm not qualified. But it happened to me. Dehydration caused heart irregularity. So it could have happened to anybody, including Schmuck and Yahoo. So anyway, but the putting on a subcutaneous monitor, they didn't even put a regular monitor on me. Regular monitors that you wear on a belt or something, and they got some things you put on it, it's not any big deal. This is a big deal, I think. So they're probably contemplating, what do? We medicate him? Do we do a surgery? They want to watch. So something's, in my opinion, something's not right. They didn't keep me overnight. They didn't run a bunch of tests on me. Something's not good with him. And some of you people know why. And you could be thinking about the Olive Garden with their endless salads. So this is what's going on. Now, the big news is this. This is huge. This could change the political structure in Israel like that. And I'm going to tell you what it is. There's a guy named Benny Gantz. He's a pretty big shot in the Knesset now. He's a former general and a former defense minister. And do not expect to get anything good out of this individual. But you can expect to not get a lot of the bad things from this individual that you're getting from the Netanyahu coalition. Like that law they passed that if Christians use the name of Yeshua, or they tried to pass, they got shut down early on before they even took the vote. But they tried to put a law in that people would go to jail for 6 months if they spoke the name Jesus or Yeshua in a way that could be construed as trying to spread the gospel. And I think it would be to minors or something. So if some Christian tourists were at the Wailing Wall, let's say, in Jerusalem, and they were in a group of 40 people, and they led them in prayer, and they closed the prayer in Jesus' name, or in, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach in Hebrew, the whole group could go to jail. It could be construed as trying to set an example to the people if there's children there that Yeshua or Jesus is the Messiah, and 6 months in jail for the whole tour group. This is what they wanted to do. And they've been trying to pass a law like this for years and years. What are they trying to do? They're trying to blot Yeshua's name out of Israel. You got it? Now, why would you do that unless you were an espy? You wouldn't. The rabbis have blotted Jehovah's name out by telling the people you can't use the name Jehovah. It'll bring trouble on you. So they say Hashem, the name. Well, who the heck is the name? Ford Motor Vehicles, Lamborghini, Eastern Airlines, I don't know. Who's Hashem? Who is that? Do you know what that is? I don't know who that is. So they talk to people, they say Baruch Hashem. And it's supposed to be, you're saying Jehovah, so they effectively block the name Jehovah out from the Jewish people that observe the Talmudic rabbis. Nice, huh? 2/3 get cut off and 1/3 makes it and gets raised up mightily to Jehovah. That's in Zechariah 13 verses 8 and 9. Not yet fulfilled. So, Netanyahu has three, I got to give you the background, some of you know this, 3 criminal cases actively with trials going on now. The trials are supposed to last years. If he gets convicted on all 3, he gets 16 years in jail. One case is 3 years, the other case is 3 years. Maximum prison penalty, the other one is 10 years. Normally, they have sent prime ministers and presidents to jail. At one point, several years ago, there was a former prime minister and a former president in the prison system at the same time. What a great country. So, it's not that, the real Israel is going to be bad. It's this Israel's bad, okay? All right. The Aspots are running it since 48. They never stopped, and it's still going on. It's a punishment. All right. This one, the Netanyahu critter is, or the thing, or whatever, Shmuckenyahu, is, I think, the worst curse on Israel that I know of. He's horrible. All right. So, he has to get laws passed. He's heading towards something called the French law, which is a law that they have in France where they immunize the seated president, who now is Macron, from any prosecution, civil or criminal, for anything he did in office. So if Netanyahu gets a law like that passed here, and it exists in other countries too, it's not just France. America doesn't have it, as evidenced by what the Trump criminal cases, right? So other countries, just because America doesn't have it, it doesn't mean other countries don't, because they do. Do I have a list? I don't know. You could research it. But anyway, to get that passed, Netanyahu has to weaken the power of the Attorney General and the Supreme Court. Because they'll never allow it, because it breaks what's called our basic laws, which are sort of kind of like our Constitution in America. Not really, but sort of. Okay? So, Gantz has almost as many votes as the Likud party, which is Netanyahu's party. What do I would say, I don't know the latest poll, but probably 24, 27, where Likud's probably in the 30s, 31, 32. And Yair Lapid has a good amount of votes, probably in the 20s, low 20s anyway. Yair Lapid is a former TV announcer that didn't finish high school, that is a politician. He was briefly prime minister, very briefly, and he is a left-winger. Is he left of left? No, he's straight up left-wing. So you got left-wing, you got right-wing, and you got center. What's Netanyahu? He says he's center, but he's not. He's left of center, but left-wing is over here, and he's over here. So let's say he's in between left-wing and center, to the left. In his coalition, he has Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Together combined, they hold about 15 seats in the Knesset. Knesset has a total of 120 seats, 120 elected members of the Knesset. Okay? You need 61 votes to get things done, pass laws and so forth. If Netanyahu can't hold 61 seats, opposition could call for a vote of no confidence, and Netanyahu, if he doesn't come up with 61 seats, he's deemed to be ineffective because he can't pass laws, he can't pass budgets, and he needs to go, so they hold a new election 90 days later, which usually comes out to someplace between 90 and 120 days, because they got to have time to mess around before they get to the point of calling another election. All right. So, the Ultra-Orthodox are killing Netanyahu, particularly United Torah Judaism. They just keep putting a political gun to his head and say, we're going to have this law passed or we're going to wreck your coalition. So they got Netanyahu to give him more money. So every one of these sluggards that goes to the yeshiva studying Kabbalah and the Talmud, very little real Torah, they call Kabbalah and Talmud Torah, which is erroneous, and they get a stipend. Now they want Netanyahu to give them a draft exemption, so the way that would play is their boys sit in the yeshiva, which is an educational institution under Talmud, not Torah. They briefly say, Moses' law that we are aware of in the first 5 books of the Bible was given to the Goyim, the heathen, as a deception. The real law was the oral law, which wasn't written down, but it was passed on to the rabbis, oy vey, right? Let's give a big oy vey right here. And it's not the written law, but yet they wrote it down in about 10 or 12 books called the Talmud. So it's also a written law. Duh. Play the violin here. What kind of song are they singing? You know? Not a good song. All right. The Talmud says Yeshua was not the Messiah, not the Son of God, didn't rise from the dead, and anything else they could say. That he wasn't born of a woman and the Holy Spirit. They refer to him as a mamzer, which is the Hebrew word for bastard. Got it? That's what they write in their book, that they teach that this book overrides Moses, who came down with Elijah and appeared to Yeshua, and they call it the Mount of Transformation, I think, in the Bible. That's not a biblical term, they call it that. Okay. And they override Moses. Oh, right? Give me a break on this one. So, this is part of the punishment of Israel. Their ears are stopped up and their eyes are closed, so they fall for this. You don't, I don't, but sadly they do. And if you live in the country with them, it's very hard living with this. Okay? But it's closing out. The punishment days of Hosea 6, 1 and 2 are closing out. The punishment days of Hosea 6, 1 and 2, I have a lot of trouble believing started at the time of Yeshua's death or resurrection. I believe it started in 63 AD when the Romans started attacking Jerusalem and killing the Jews. There was a 7-year period there. There was a break at 67 AD, and then it started again for the last 3.5 years, culminating in the temple being destroyed utterly in 70 AD and Jerusalem being messed up and many, many people being killed and 200,000 taken prisoner back to Rome as slaves. And the Roman captivity, in other words, Israelites not living in Israel, is still ongoing. All right. Now, so are the times of the Goyim really up? Well, is Jerusalem trodden down of the Gentiles or the Goyim now? Well, I'd say it is. The there's a lot of things that are forbidden under Moses' law, I mean the Bible in general, that these temples are the gods. There's many of them. So that's wrong, and that can't be here. And we're still getting shot, car rammed, stabbed. Every now and then bombs go off. And, it's not that we got the dominion over it, but we're not really using it correctly, okay? I would say. You wouldn't? All right. So I'd say, yeah, it's still trodden down, but when you read Acts 2, there was glorious Messianic congregations. What was the early church? The Jews. Read Acts 2. Hello? Follow your Bible. Stop following the people on TV, on the internet with 300,000 followers and holding seminars. And one of the big ones from Israel is taking everybody on a cruise to Alaska. They're on the cruise now. What the heck are they going to Alaska for? I don't understand. Are they fans of Sergeant Yukon of the the Canadian Royal Mounted Police, who always gets his man? Some of you that got the gray hair will remember that was a popular TV show in the 50s. Sergeant Yukon on his horse with his red suit and the hat, and it was not a bad TV show, really. It was as good as Gunsmoke. I mean, or Wanted Dead or Alive with Steve McQueen and the sawed-off rifle, or Wyatt Earp. It was as good as any of those. I guess they were giving Canada their Western, but I used to watch it. It was kind of entertaining at the time. I was a kid in the 50s. I wasn't an old man in the 50s. I'm not that old. But anyway, so let me get back into Netanyahu. So Netanyahu got a lot of problems there, as evidenced probably by him going to the emergency room last night. 2 nights ago. Or that could have nothing to do with the stress, but I think he's under tremendous stress. If he doesn't get this law passed, he will have a high, in my opinion as a non-lawyer, and reading the opinions of many other people in Israel, he has a high probability of going to jail on some of these 3 counts. Going to jail on 1 count, even if he just gets a year in jail, he's done. All his enemies are going to turn around and go after him. And does this guy got enemies? Oh my gosh, does this guy got enemies? He's got enemies like Carter has pills. That's a throwback again to the Carter's liver pills, which probably did no good, that they used to advertise on TV all the time in the 50s. They used to advertise stuff that was really, the FDA wasn't around, they were not very active. They used to sell something called Geritol. It was a liquid, and they said it was good for tired blood. Have you ever heard of a medical term that was scientifically proven, tired blood? I never heard of such a thing. Millions of people would buy this crap. It's junk. They used to sell junk on TV back then. It was just bad stuff. All right, moving along. So Netanyahu's scared. He's real scared. So he can't just jump right in and pass this law. The people in the Knesset are scared. The protesters today, I think they're shutting Israel down for the whole week. They're trying to. He's getting scared. Look at what happened in France, which I still do not know if it's over or not. Last I heard, Macron was cutting the internet back on certain things, social media or something. So I don't really know what's happening in France. I never read that it stopped or it didn't stop. I'm at a loss. I don't know. I heard a few days ago another church burned, so that's not a good sign. It was a Catholic church. That's not a good sign. How could that be a good sign of peace and calm? It's not. But I don't know what's going on. We're not getting a lot of news, but it'll get out. Don't worry. Why people will travel to and fro France? Get it out. I'll start looking for it harder. It'll come around, I think. But it may be over. It may not. I don't know. But it got bad, and they don't want to see anything like that in Israel now. Several pilots, I don't know how many, that are reserve pilots, are not reporting for training, to practice. Now, if you don't fly so many hours in a certain period of time in the most normal countries, you lose your rating, and you gotta, do so many takeoffs and landings or whatever you gotta do. Right? So we're not going for training anymore with Netanyahu's garbage, with changing the judicial system. It'll make him basically a dictator. There's 3 branches of government in democracy, which this place is, Israel is. One is the executive branch, which is, in America, the White House. Here it's Netanyahu. 2 is the judicial, which in America is the Supreme Court. Here it's our High Court. Similar. Very similar. They don't call it Supreme, they call it High Court. By slang, we refer to it as Supreme, the newspapers do, but it's a High Court, really. And then the 3rd branch is the legislative. Netanyahu has a heavy influence in the legislative, with the largest political party he is the chairman of, Likud Party. He's stripping the Supreme Court or the High Court of their power, so that leaves the executive branch and the legislative branch, which he controls both, so people are calling him a dictator. Okay? And they're afraid of him because he lies. I read it in the newspaper all the time. Other politicians that are seated in the Knesset and holding other office talk about how Netanyahu lies. He does lie. You wind him up, you put him in front of a camera, all these great things come out of his mouth, and then he walks off the camera and he forgets about everything and goes and does what he wants. It's terrible. All right, so it's almost like a drug cartel country, or it's so shaky and crazy here. So now Netanyahu wants to knock out the reasonableness clause, which this Supreme Court or the High Court could strike a law down that Knesset passed based on saying it's not reasonable. Now, this is something I sort of agree with. It should be, the laws should be restricted to being shut down because they violate the basic laws, sort of our Constitution. Not just because these left wings, and they are left wing, Supreme Court people don't like it. When they strike this down, it enables Aryeh Deri to return to his post as the health minister and the minister of the interior. Aryeh Deri is what's considered to be an ultra-Orthodox, Sephardic-oriented, and he's been in jail, I believe, twice, and he had a third criminal case, and he settled with them by saying he won't hold public office anymore, and he got a suspended sentence. But he pled guilty. So I believe it's 3 criminal charges. It might be 2, but I believe it's 3. And Netanyahu appoints him not only health minister, but minister of the interior, and he got convicted for both of those cases involved corruption as minister of the interior, and Netanyahu puts him back in the same place. So does Netanyahu not run the country like a drug cartel country? Of course he does. Of course he does. He's so bad that I think Goliath would be a better prime minister than Netanyahu. And Goliath wasn't a nice guy. Okay. All right. Now we want David. We don't want Goliath. But we don't want Netanyahu. He's like a Goliath. But what comes out of his mouth is nice, but his actions are horrible. So you got to not listen to just what comes out of their mouth. You got to look at what they say and what they do and line them up, and then you get a pretty good picture of what kind of motivation is behind these idiots. All right, and Netanyahu's not a very smart guy. He's a good manipulator and a liar and a cheat and a scoundrel and a backstabber. So listen to what he wants to do. He wants to drop the Shas Party and United Torah Judaism Party out of this coalition, which is about 15 seats, could be 16, 14, right around 15 combined. And he wants to put Gantz in. And if he gets Gantz, Gantz has a lot more seats, he could drop Ben-Gvir and Smotrich out of his coalition, who are the right-wingers. So Netanyahu formed the right-wing government and now wants to, and an Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Jewish government. Netanyahu's power base now is Ben-Gvir and Smotrich running around with about 15 votes combined, and United Torah Judaism and Shas Party 15, so those components make 30, and then he has 32 or 3 or 4 or something like that, pushing him up to the over 61 threshold that he needs. So he wants to swap them out for Gantz. And with Gantz, if he just gets Gantz, he could drop the 2 ultra-Orthodox people. Will they ever go back to him again? Sure they will, because that's the Israeli mentality. They don't care. If they have a chance to go back to them again and they get something out of it, they'll do it. Okay, the draft exemption law is scary for Netanyahu, because that's going to get, you could possibly see Israel divide against these ultra-Orthodox. We're seeing it already, demonstrations in their neighborhood. So what could happen? They could start spitting on them in the street, pushing them, knocking their hats off, cursing them out, stuff like that. More so than that, they could organize and try to pass laws against them. Reverse the stipend the government just started giving them for every person attending yeshiva. Reverse their daycare, reverse the money going to them. Strip the chief rabbinate's office of its power. And make them basically of non-effect living in Israel, which should be the case. It's a cult. It doesn't follow the Bible. And they discriminate against the Jews. If you're not an ultra-Orthodox, they don't consider you a real Jew. They might say you're a historic Jew by lineage. I've heard them say that about me. But that's it. So, it's real easy to see the Israelis turn on them. They're mad at them. So Netanyahu realizes he hooked his wagon to the wrong wagon train, and these moron ultra-Orthodox are liable to drive him off the cliff. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich is not that bad. First of all, the things that they normally do are good, except they support the ultra-Orthodox. Of course, they're in a coalition with them, but their ideas are not so bad at all. They want peace and safety in Israel. They want to fulfill Bible prophecy, the land, stuff like that. I don't disagree with any of this stuff, okay? But they hook together with the ultra-Orthodox, and now you got a crackpot organization going, which is what we have now. And the people in Israel are about ready to go ballistic. They'll start shutting the country down, and if that doesn't work, it'll go to what happened in France, I think, where they won't burn stores or houses or people's cars, but they'll go after the government. They'll start shutting government offices down. Now, the newspaper said there was 4,000 reservists that don't want to report for duty because of Netanyahu, and none of these laws really passed yet. If they pass a law, that 4,000 may go to 40,000 or higher. I don't know. And I don't know if the newspaper's telling the truth. They could be downplaying it. The head of the IDF now, this is the uniform general, the big shot, right? I think Mark Miley, equivalent in America, met with Gallant, who's the defense minister, who's a former general, and expressed very severe concerns about the reservists not wanting to participate in the military. They can't go around and around. They have a legal obligation to do it, but the government of Israel, the way Israel is structured, cannot do it. Okay? First of all, where are they going to put them? And it'll just cause more trouble for Netanyahu. We can't do that. They'll scream dictator like there's no tomorrow. So Netanyahu, all he cares about is staying out of jail. So what he's doing is he's approaching Gantz. Will Gantz go with him? Gantz is not a bright guy. Netanyahu takes advantage of Gantz. And, Gantz might be persuaded to go with him. I'd say it's 50-50. And Gantz is left-wing. Will Gantz give Netanyahu's get-out-of-jail-free card? Only if it could be done in a way where it doesn't give Netanyahu dictatorial powers. In other words, if he could find a way, if there is such a way, which may not be, where they could structure this so that Netanyahu doesn't go to jail for any of these cases, doesn't have to admit criminality or plead guilty or anything like that, and just doesn't go to jail and stays in office, Gantz will probably do it for the good of the country, because the country's coming apart, and Gantz, being a former head general and a former defense minister, knows the country's coming apart badly. So Gantz might work with it. Then he's got to convince Yair Lapid to go also. Now, they got a left-wing agenda, which is no trouble for Netanyahu, okay? Pro-LGBT rights, and they might strip the chief rabbinate's office of power. This would be one of the best things you could see happen in Israel. Get rid of them. They're killing Israel. They're killing Israel, these ultra-Orthodox. And they're trying to use the political system and blackmail and extort Netanyahu legally to keep giving them more power and more money. They're killing us. Okay, ultimately what they'll do, if they get enough control, is they'll move 1 million ultra-Orthodox into Israel, or however many they can, and make them citizens and get more votes, and they'll be going from 15 votes combined to 30 votes combined, and they'll run the country, and it'll be a miserable, bankrupt toilet. That's the end of the line with these idiots. They're not bright people at all. They'll just run everything into the ground quickly. They're welfare recipients. They don't work. They don't get more than an 8th grade education. It's a cult. They don't want them getting an education, so they can't leave the cult. Where are they going to go? You know, think Branch Davidians. It's almost as bad as that. Not quite. It's bad. It's really bad. You got women shaving their head and putting wigs on. What kind of garbage is this? Why are they shaving their heads? It's absurd. Why do they walk around wearing black clothes with a white shirt and a black hat with a yarmulke under it? What do they dress like this for? There's nothing in the Bible that they should dress like this. What do they tell their own people? You've got to dress like a Jew. Isn't this stupid? That's so if somebody wants to discriminate against you or persecute you, they know exactly who you are. Now that will backfire on them because everybody knows exactly who they are when they walk around the streets of Israel. And the 50% of Israel that's secular is very rapidly boiling over with hatred and resentment towards them. There's nobody in Israel that wants them in power or control other than themselves, because they don't care about anybody but themselves. Your kids go fight the Arabs and get killed, not ours. You work, we don't work. You support us. This is their attitude. You see how stupid it is? They're not smart. That's not, it's stupid. Okay? It's just stupid. They were waving Palestinian flags, these ultra-Orthodox, the black hats, the black coats, the black shoes on. Palestinian flags at a protest. Why? They want to see the Palestinians take over Israel. And they think the Palestinians are going to give them Palestinian passports and let them live in Israel. Because they don't think Israel is Israel because it doesn't follow Talmud. That's the Palestinian. That's the Haredi, I believe they call themselves. They have different sects in the SCCPS and the Ultra-Orthodox. They have their differences with each other. Their rabbis prophesy, their rabbis blow of garbage, Yeshua said, call no man rabbi. Okay, so Netanyahu isn't getting anywhere, except the protests are going to shut Israel down. And if they shut Israel down, there's going to be a vote of no confidence, or worse. What if in France, we were here in the military, told Macron, you got 2 days and we're taking over temporarily and we're going to clean it up. And then Macron sort of started using the military. And I don't have the updates anymore. I don't know what's going on. So it's not that I'm going to say anything wrong or right about it. I don't know what's going on. That's all I know. There's a lack of information that I could find. And I look reasonably well. All right. So Netanyahu's worried about that because that'll be his end. And they'll be protesting for his overthrow. And the military is not going to go to bat for Netanyahu. There's no sign of that. And, we got the head general sitting down with the Minister of Defense, trying to tell him that Netanyahu's endangering the country because the reservists are just dropping out of the system. The active duty military guys would have to go AWOL to drop out, and then they might get arrested or something like that. But the reservists, they work, they live home, they report for training, and they're just not reporting for training. So the system isn't set up to arrest thousands and thousands of them. Where are they going to put them? And that's all Netanyahu has to do to get more and more people mad at him. And they've been trying to get the Attorney General to stop the protesters. And now it came out that Ben-Gvir, who's in charge of the police, was putting the arrest quotas on the police, and the Attorney General said you can't do that. And of course you can't do that, because the police are only supposed to arrest people that they see or have very strong reason to believe did a crime. If you're going to work with a quota, it means if they did a crime or not, you're going to arrest them. In some states, it used to be the Highway Patrol had to write a ticket every 15 minutes. I think California was that way. And that's illegal, so it was never officially established that I know of, but Ronald Reagan beefed up. The Highway Patrol used to be called traffic officers. Before Ronald Reagan was governor, they had a badge, like a regular police badge. It was, I think, a 7-point star, 6 or 7-point star. They carried a gun. They had limited arrest powers. And when I was a deputy sheriff in California, they had to call us to make arrests. This was just before my time when I got sworn in, just before that. They had to call a deputy to come make an arrest when they found drugs in the car. They couldn't arrest for drugs. They could arrest for a stolen car or drunk driving, if somebody assaulted them, or some things, but they couldn't arrest. They were just traffic officers. But they hit the red light or the blue light, and you had to get, if you didn't pull over, they'd chase you, roadblock you, you'd go to jail. But it was limited what they could do, okay? Like, for instance, if they found you with counterfeit money, how that would happen, I don't know. But if they did, they couldn't arrest you. They'd have to call, like, Secret Service or something like that. All right. So Ronald Reagan decided that he was having trouble with Black Panthers and Hells Angels and people like that in California. So he started greatly expanding the Highway Patrol. And he changed their status from traffic officers to police officers. He made them real cops. And he used them to control riots. They were traffic police. Now they were getting weeks and weeks of riot control. What's up with that? Why would a highway patrolman have to, do that? Then they started also handling calls like burglary, domestic dispute, a fight, unknown disturbance, shots fired in little unincorporated cities and towns where there was no police department. So they would take calls. So they started using them way different than the organization was formed, which was traffic police. And they also had what was called the state police, and they basically sat in government buildings with a badge and a gun and kept the order, like motor vehicles or the state franchise tax board or, highway safety, or, that's all they were doing. They were like security guards at buildings, and they would patrol. And then they had a campus police that was regular police, but they just worked on the campuses, and I think they had a stretch of a quarter of a mile from the campus, or maybe 100 yards, I can't remember, I used to know, where they couldn't go further than that. And they would protect the buildings and the equipment and the students. You got assault, you got rape, you got burglary, stuff like that. So they would do that. And then they had a drug police, whatever the heck they called them. Then they had parole officers, correction officers, all that different stuff, right? They had a police that investigated doctors and dentists and chiropractors. Medical board examiner, they can investigate optometrists, I think even opticians, and they had badges and guns and police powers. But the highway patrol was just for traffic, so he made them into stormtroopers. And the way he paid for it is he made them write tickets every 15 minutes. So that's how the state got the money to support having these people. Before these days, the highway patrol in California and the Black Panthers found a loophole in the gun laws where they could carry shotguns around the streets of Oakland or San Francisco without violating a law, unless there was a unique city ordinance to it. So the Hells Angels were putting shotguns in a mount on the front forks of the Harley Davidson or BSA choppers, whatever they were using. And they had a holster on there, and they'd keep the shotgun down to the legal limit, which would mean they'd cut the butt off, just have a pistol grip. And the barrel was 18 inches. It had to be 18 inches. And they'd ride around like that. And the Black Panthers were carrying shotguns to the demonstrations. Well, this made Reagan very uneasy. So anyway, Netanyahu's got some big problems. So he's going to stab Smotrich, Gantz, Shah's Party, United Torah Judaism in the back, and try to hook up with Gantz, who's like this with the LP, and bring them in and drop all these other guys. Because he'll get enough votes with his own Likud party, with Gantz and the LP, and probably Meretz will kick in, and I don't know who else. If Gantz does it, and Gantz, I don't know, I'd say it's 50-50 today. If Gantz will do it, we know more, but he invited Gantz to a meeting last night or today. It didn't happen, or it did happen, I would say. If it didn't happen, it'll happen today, a big meeting, trying to figure out, some plans about what they're going to do and stuff. And see, Netanyahu and Gantz are not going to be right-wing in dealing with the enemies of Israel. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich would. Enemies of Israel would be Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and this type of thing. They're not right-wing about the West Bank. Would they give it back? I don't think they're that stupid, but they could be. Let me look at the chat and see if I got anything I got to deal with here. You got a government that would be you got a government that would be defensive of Israel. They wouldn't let Israel get overrun. They would, if the rockets come in, they'll retaliate, but not hard, soft. Like Netanyahu, warn them before they blow the building up so they could get out, stuff like that. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich would destroy the Gaza shoots rockets. They would not. They would kill them, and a lot of collateral damage with civilians dead. They say half the people living in Gaza suffer from depression. I got that out of the newspaper. I don't know how true or not true it is. I wouldn't give it a lot of credit, but it could have truth. So this thing might just come together. Gantz and Yehuda may just say, okay, let's do this. But Netanyahu will not sit with them in a coalition unless they can guarantee him he doesn't go to jail. And this is the problem. Everything revolves around Netanyahu going to jail right now in this whole country. And they've just got to get rid of him. Now, the Attorney General did file with the Supreme Court a case. Some petitioners presented to the Attorney General that Netanyahu should be removed from office because there's a conflict of interest. He has criminal cases, and he's changing the judiciary to affect his criminal cases. This is what he's doing. Previously, the Attorney General sent such a case to the Supreme Court, and they did not hear it. Now, it's a she, the Attorney General is a female, sent it in again, and she said, well, I gotta send it in because it looked like your case had merit, some words to this effect, but she said, I think it's a waste of time because they already turned it down once. See, what they're afraid of is Netanyahu's going to turn around to the Supreme Court and say, you're being political, this is a wrong decision, I refuse to step out of office, and I'm putting you under house arrest or arresting you and putting you in jail for trying to overthrow the government. Sedition, treason, this is what they're afraid of. They're scared of Netanyahu. So that's why the Attorney General cracks wise like that and says, well, we'll put it through, see what happens.
FYI, he'll be here in a few minutes.
Okay. All right, we'll start on my fan, and then I'll be out of here by then. I don't know where we're going to put the little dogs, do you? Did you hear me? So this is the problem. And I don't know how to solve it. With Netanyahu, I don't know what the solution's going to be. I don't see how Gantz and Lapid are going to get him off of this thing without changing a lot of the power of the legal structure. I don't know. Unless they go to the Supreme Court on the side and make a deal in the name of saving Israel. I don't think the court will do that. Because if Netanyahu is alive and well politically, he's going to take revenge against them, and they know that. So we're at a point now where I don't know what's going to happen. But I will watch it, and I will report. They're using the cluster bombs in Ukraine as expected. Russia's going to retaliate. I think Ukraine's using phosphorus bombs or artillery shells. Russia's going to retaliate. That announcement my wife made was the installer of the air conditioner, so I'm going to have to get off the air because we need that air conditioner put in. And the air conditioner's sitting here already. So China is harassing Japan with Russia and Taiwan to a great extent. China's economy is busted out bad, which is a big war drum. They're still moving forward with their BRICS. America's putting warships around the Persian Gulf. Jordan and Egypt haven't started fighting with Israel yet, but according to the Bible, they will. Hezbollah, they think, is simmered down and isn't going to war with Israel, but we still got to address that tent with the 5 soldiers in it on Israeli territory. It will be addressed eventually. Well, they got their hands full with the protests. They don't want more trouble right now. So they're just pushing it off the back burner. It's not hurting Israel, so they're waiting for it. Syria, as there's trouble, the IRGC from Iran is there with Syrian forces and some other radical jihadist types fighting with Russia as well, fighting against the Americans in Syria. So Russia's being involved fighting against America in Syria directly, Russian troops against American troops. It's beginning to look like that's going to go down. I think it's already beginning. I don't know if they've ever yet fired on American troops, but that's going to start. And I don't know. I don't think that America can invoke NATO because it's taking place in Syria, not taking place in America. And what's America doing over there in Syria anyway? They don't have permission from the Syrian government to be there, so this is a problem for America. Turkey is fighting in Iraq against terrorist Kurds, I think, are going after. Maybe parts of Syria too, yeah, northeast Syria as well. Biden has snubbed Netanyahu, but he invited Herzog, the president, who's opposed to Netanyahu, over to the White House, which is irking Netanyahu. So Netanyahu is talking about going to China. Well, he's got a meeting with China. He may apply to BRICS, but I do not think they'll let him in. It's too controversial. And it's going to give Trump tremendous political fuel in his public speeches that Biden has destroyed one of the greatest allies America had, the only democracy in the Middle East, blah, 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 blah. So Biden is going to have political problems from Trump over this thing with Israel, and Trump is smart enough to use it effectively, and he will. But Biden's advisors are pretty smart people as well, and they may counterattack politically. America is not moving a lot of naval vessels into the Pacific region. They're just using land-based military bases all over the place. I think there's 4 in the Philippines. They're all over. They're in South Korea, Japan, they're all over the place. I think they're setting up in Taiwan somewhere. They keep, every time we turn around, they're sending more weapons to Taiwan. They're saying that if Russia doesn't make a deal with with Ukraine, they're going to keep shoving the weapons in. And the only deal that Ukraine's going to take is Russia pulls out of Ukraine and just goes about their business, and then Ukraine just goes about their business. But then the question of war reparations will come up, which Putin will hate. He won't want to do that. So, but the pressure from NATO on Ukraine would probably be Russia pulls out, the day Russian troops are all out, we'll put you in NATO. And then you don't have to worry about Russia anymore, because it would be unlikely for him to attack a NATO country. So they would be, they could incentivize greatly joining NATO to Ukraine. And Ukraine may go for it, and now they've got to figure out a way to get Russia to just leave. Ukraine's not going to give the land up to Russia so quick. Maybe they'll force that on Zelensky of Ukraine. I don't know if they'll take the bait. So they could let him give the territory to Russia. Say then you get to go into NATO right away, and the war stops, you're in NATO, and then Putin won't start again. It's got a lot of positives for Zelensky. But Russia has to come away with that piece of geography, or they'll probably overthrow him or something in Russia, I don't know. Putin needs to come back with something. So he comes back and says Ukraine couldn't take it anymore, so they threw the towel in. So for now, we got this piece of geography, and one day we'll go back and get the rest, this type of dialogue. Right? But then Ukraine goes in NATO, and that's the end of it. So it's got possibility. It doesn't look highly probable, because Zelensky doesn't want to give up the territory, and I don't think Russia wants to walk away empty-handed. And Russia may want a lot more than that little piece of territory he grabbed. He may want much more. There was a bridge called the Kerch Bridge that was blown up, I think, in 4 places. And it apparently, there's some people saying it was a kamikaze naval vessel. In other words, a water drone, an ocean drone, whatever you want to call it, a naval drone that went under the bridge, and someone pushed detonate, boom, and exploded and messed up the bridge substantially, and Putin's ticked off. Look, we've seen Putin get ticked off a lot. With a lot of red lines crossed, and he hasn't done nothing. If he can't handle Ukraine, NATO will squash him like an insect. The aggression in the Pacific region is very high right now by China, the intimidation. North Korea doing it also. So the world is still in general disarray, greatly. The heat wave all around the world. My wife said this, and I agree with her. We're noticing in the air that it dropped down some. It's not the same kind of heat. Now I got a problem. The guy's going to be working in the room. I got Chief and Yafa here, and I got to put them someplace where, because I don't think I could leave him here when he's working on the room. Maybe, no, I don't think I can. So I got to put them someplace where they're not going to pee and poop on the floor. I guess what I got to do is take them out in the heat so they can pee and poop all over the place, and then put them in my room and keep them in there. But I don't know how to do that. This, if I close the door in my room, I don't get any air conditioning, and that's a bad idea. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to get a crate. I have to put it in one of the big doors crates or something. And, I think they'll only need to be in there an hour and a half. Please pray for us. Our car is getting repaired. It was about $600. It was a gasoline line hoses, but you have to buy a whole set of hoses. And that was very expensive for the labor. So that really knocked us. I thought it would be up $100, and it turned into a whole big thing. So pray we can get another car. Jehovah can do anything. Nothing's too hard for Jehovah. Pray we can get another car. This car is too much. Now, I also would like you to pray that we get another house, but not just a house, another 2 houses. One. In our old age, it's getting very, very hard for us to live here. Because in the winter months, it's cold and miserable, and our bones ache, and the fingers get locked up, and, it's very difficult for us to live here. We're old. And in the heat, it's horrible. So much of the year, probably 7 months of the year, we sit in the house all the time. This is too hot to go out or too cold to go out, maybe even 8 months a year. And in our age, I think what we need to do is be able to have a house like in Naharia or the Golan Heights or Safed better, where it's cooler, So instead of getting highs of 105 and 108, you get highs of 90, 91. It's not so bad. You can go out maybe just for a few hours. The heat of the day, you don't want to go out. And then in the summer, we could live in a place like Eli. In the winter, live in a place like Eli where you get almost no rain, very little rain. You get rain, very little rain, and you don't ever get those cold temperatures really. I think in our age, that's where we have to be, because it's just very hard for us living in this climate. The other thing is this area used to be, I think it was a great idea to move here years ago, but they built it up so much. They went from about 3,000 people living here to, they must have 4,000 or 5,000. So it's much worse. The traffic is horrible. I can't walk around safely on the streets. There's no sidewalks. I can't get a little motorized electric thing to get around like other elderly people do, because it's really not safe to use it. And there's so many false believers here. This little per capita more believers than any Jews in Israel, but what they don't tell you is more than half of them, in my opinion, or half of them are false believers. They work teaching in the churches around the world. They have ministries, they do music ministries in the churches. It's all about the churches. And that is wrong, you know that. So they're false believers. And there's a ton of them here, so I'm always ducking them, which is annoying. Because I don't want to have any fellowship with them. It's against the scriptures. So it's problematic for us to move and all that, but please pray for it, because or pray that the Lord comes up with some other solution. This is just too hard trying to handle this weather, and then the winter weather. It's too much on us. So pray we deal with it. There might be another way he knows to deal with it, but the best way I can think of is to split, go a few months here and a few months there. And that way you can live more comfortably, because it's very, very hard on us to stay cooped up in the house. The houses are not like what you're used to in America or Canada. They're dumpy houses. They're all junk houses. They're made out of concrete block, they have no insulation. They have no carpeting. And the rooms are small. They're not nice. They're not nice. And, you know, the guest house isn't really doing much for us. We went to talk to Airbnb, and they're willing to put it in, but they wouldn't let us charge a good rate. So they made us put a rate in that's so bad that I don't even want to rent it, because they'll come here and they could put 3 air conditioners on, because it has 3 air conditioners, which we can remove and take with us when we go. And between that, I could lose money on the air conditioning bill. Really. I mean, I don't think I would, but it would eat it up, and then I got to pay somebody to come in and clean it up. It's like, why bother? You know, they wouldn't let us run it at a higher price. It's a problem. So maybe we're not supposed to be here anymore. So pray for that we get a better solution. You know, Jehovah can do anything, and he might have a better idea of how we should live than I do. But I think the split living, which is a pain in the neck, because you got to move your stuff around every 6 months, but at least we wouldn't suffer and have to stay locked up in the house. And that's the problem. And we got to be able to accommodate the pets. We don't want to get rid of them. So there might be other solutions. So please pray for that. And I could see that we need to do something about this car, because it's 10 years old and the parts are scarce and they're very expensive now. That's the problem. And they're hard to get. Like the guy has to sit on the phone and make 10 or 12 phone calls to find the parts, and then you give it another few months or a year or something, there may not be any parts left. And the car, if we sell, it's not worth much. It'll bring in a little, you know. But so I appreciate your prayers on that. The other thing I want to add in is, when we live in these extreme climates like we really do here, we have very hard electric bills, are very steep. Hold on a second. Yes. Yeah. Mise? Okay, do you have English? No. All right. She got mad at me. She asked me if I need a mortgage. Do I have a mortgage? No. Thank you, bye-bye. Telemarketer. I don't know, that's the thing. Usually it says suspected spam, and you don't answer the call because people report their numbers. I should report them. They also, when you drive around and you use WAS in Israel, they report where the cops are setting up radar on the freeways, and they do that on the freeways. And so as soon as they set up, people report them, so within probably 5 minutes or less, you know where they are. They don't, and they haven't stopped that. It used to be in New York City, the New York City cops would set up radar traps, and it was not real radar. They put a hose down in the street, and then they measured, I don't know, 100 yards later, they put another hose or something like that, and they could clock you that way. So I don't think it was really radar, it was something else. And there was a radio station that would had helicopters flying around and spotting these radar traps, and had people phoning in, and I don't know how they did it, but they would constantly tell you where the radar was that morning on the commute, and then in that afternoon, and they got a lot of listeners that would listen to them with the news. They did news, basically. They did news reporting, you know, stock market reporting and all of that stuff, and then they would keep giving you the reports where the radar was, so they got the morning drive and the afternoon drive people to listen to, so they want to know where the radar was. But it wasn't real radar. So I don't think you could use a radar detector on that because it had hoses in the street that would, you know, anyway. But later on they actually started using radar so they could use the thing. Alright, so yeah, I just think that this living lifestyle we're trying to live here is just it's the wrong part of Israel to live in. It's just too hot, too cold. Jerusalem is very, very cold in the winter. You could get 3 feet of snow. Rare to get snow, but you get it. And it'll go below freezing. So it's a very, very cold winter there. It's short-lived. It's basically Thanksgiving to mid or late February, but it's still very, very harsh. That would be hard on us. And what happens is your electric bill goes up because you're running heaters all the time. And in the hot weather, your utility bill, your electric bill goes up from the air conditioners. Now in Jerusalem, you don't need air conditioners. You get swamp coolers because it's elevated and it's dry. And swamp coolers are like running a fan. It's very cheap. And they work very effectively over there. But it's very crowded and extremely expensive to live there. Very expensive. And you can't have a car. You got to live without a car. But you take taxis, so you have an offset, you know. So you go to the store, you have groceries, you take a taxi back, or they deliver now. You don't really worry. They got in Jerusalem. There's probably 15 or 20 supermarkets that are delivered, so you just take the deliveries. That's all. And then maybe you go to the shuk and buy your fresh meat and vegetables or something. I don't know. I'd have to work on it. It just depends. You might, where you're living, the neighborhood guys will sometimes have quality fruit and vegetables within 2 blocks of the house, and that makes it easy. And then you could just go to the shuk and the butchers in the shuk or some other place and get your good meats. Or go to the Arab meat market and get your meats once every 2 weeks, easily, or once a month even, and put them in the freezer. So it's a big job, but you know. So our reason for living here was to have the garden and do teaching out of the garden, which hardly happens once a year, twice. It doesn't. Not much goes on with that. And the Zimmer, what they call the Zimmer, the guest house. And that's since COVID. It was running great. It worked out until COVID hit. And I don't know. There's not that many people that want to come up to this area of Israel. It's not that desirable of an area. So there are people that do come. We could rent it by the month, and that would ruin our lifestyle, though, and we wouldn't get that much. We'd get a good living, but now we got a neighbor. We can't cut through the backyard. We got to keep walking around, which is very hard, especially in the rain and the heat. and it'd be hard with the dogs, and it's difficult. It's difficult. It would help, but then we're not living the way we want to live. It's a very, very bad burden. What? All right, I'll be off soon. So he can start on my fan. So this is the problem, and I just dread finishing the summer, which really will go till October. I got really run down the other day. You might have noticed it on the broadcast, I think yesterday. I got really run down. It was from the heat, I think. Also, I was using patches, and I had a lot of patches on me, and I fell asleep with some on, and I was breaking the protocols anyway, but the heat was wearing me down, maybe both of them, and I was really not myself. Today, I made sure I stayed hydrated. Yesterday, I was drinking Gatorade for electrolytes, a lot of water, and I slept good, and I feel like I'm bounced back, and I gotta watch myself with the heat. So I don't think it's good for us as we get older to be living in a climate like this, and we're paying very high rent here. And the Zimmer, the guest house, is proving pretty worthless to us. Very worthless. Unless you want to have friends and relatives stay here, it's proven worthless. So I think it's time we should consider moving. The only way in Israel that you could not have harsh climates is to split your living, which is a big job, but it's probably worth it. The other idea is we go someplace where we just put up with the winter, a brief winter. Now, Nahariya might work, but it's only 7 miles from Lebanon, but I have to see what the Lord says, because it's right immediately on the water. I mean, really on the water. Like, you could drive a golf ball from a lot of the houses right into the ocean. When I say it's on the water, it's on the water. And it's a lot of Russians, which don't bother me, and it's got a lot of shops and stuff to do, and it's close to Haifa. And that might work just as one place to live, because when you're near the water, you don't get that cold and you don't get that hot. So it might be that's a good balance. And it's still in the Galilee, which I believe I am supposed to stay in the Galilee. So that you'd be locked up. So that might be a better compromise. So please pray for us. I'm Moshe, my wife's Rivka. Please pray for our peace, safety, protection, joy, healing, our finances. Pray for our animals and pets, which are all rescues. Pray for the peace of Judicial, and thank you for your offerings. And I'm going to check the chat just quickly, see if anything needs dealing with. I don't think so. Let me check prayer requests. Nothing. Okay, so I'm out. Thank you, guys. And I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua.